Also, on a side note, the King's Casino did actually have now 2 series of PLO only events. So there was the Big Rap 1, which was last year, and Big Rap 2 just ended a few days ago. And those are PLO only or PLO exclusive festivals. And that also shows that in the live circuit, more and more people are interested in playing Pot Limit Omaha.
I don't know what you guys think, but I think the popularity of PLO is growing and growing. And No Limit Hold'em is just not that fun. And I can also imagine that 5-card PLO is getting more and more popular.
Yeah,
So
I don't know if I don't know, man. It's hard to say. I think PLO, is it really growing in terms of popularity? I think the whole sort of population of players playing slightly decreased. I think so. I mean, I'm not very good at this because I don't really know all the sites that are out there. I just know the main ones where I play, and I'm only interested at the higher stakes, so I don't really see what's going on in the lower pools. But I'm not really sure that PLO is growing. It might be growing in terms of like relative to Hold'em, but yeah, or like 5-card PLO or the other games. I mean, they're gaining popularity in a niche, but we've seen it over and over again. Like at one point, Do 7 Triple Draw became hugely popular and then sort of dwindled away. And at one point, stud games were the main games years back. Then it went away. Now, obviously, all the mixed games are super popular and basically the go-to for all the highest stakes. So there's always this transition. I don't think any game is gonna kind of stay on top forever, right? So as we've already discussed, like basically it's so important for a poker player to remain flexible and sort of find your niche, but stay flexible. Like keep an eye out on what's out there, because in the end of the day, you need to find a good game. A game where you have an edge, a game where the field is softer, and that's always going to be the challenge.
Absolutely, you gotta stay adaptable for sure, especially in the poker industry. I do see an increase in trend when it comes to the live games. Like 3 years ago, when I went to the WSOP, there was I think there were 2 games in the area running in terms of PLO cash game, and then 1 year later was like 6 games, and I think last year it was almost the main game that was running at Aria when it comes to cash games. So there is some increasement, especially in live games. Online, it seems to be relatively stable as far as I can tell. What I do know is that there are some off markets that are not as visible. Like there are the app markets, for example. So like these poker apps, and on these poker apps, 5-card PLO is extremely popular. It is actually the main game of choice. I haven't been grinding these games, but I do know that they are very, very popular in countries such as Brazil, for example. And then there are also other markets that are coming closer and closer to our markets. For example, the Indian market, where also PLO is the main game. So India obviously has a lot of people, and they are mainly interested in the great game, apparently. So if you see us, there are actually some native sites in India where you can only play if you are in India, and they play primarily Pot Limit Omaha. So there are some trends coming, essentially, but especially on Party Poker and Poker Stars, these trends have not been as visible, I would say.
Right. But and also like the point you made about the live games, I completely skipped the live games point, and you're absolutely right. The live game popularity of PLO is hugely increasing because, of course, the game lends itself to live poker. You play way more hands on average, so the games are more fun. There are more showdowns, bigger pots, and the variance is bigger. And for a lot of live players, especially the recreational players, that's why they're there for. They want some action. They want to have some fun. PLO games live, they're just way more fun.
There are way more spots in live PLO where you don't have to stare down your opponent in order to make a call down, but it's just all in on the flop. Let's sweat it. Let's have fun. Let's play the game. And No Limit Hold'em, especially No Limit Hold'em cash games, they definitely lost a lot of popularity in the live circuit. These days, it's basically when you go to an EPT, when you go to even to some extent the WSOP or an event at the Kings, it's going to be you play either the tournament, which is usually no limit, or you play PLO cash. Like those are the main things that are popular in the live circuits.
Yeah.
Also, on a side note, the Kings Casino did actually have now 2 series of PLO only events. So there was the Big Rap 1, which was last year, and Big Rap 2 just ended a few days ago. And those are PLO only or PLO exclusive festivals. And that also shows that in the live circuit, more and more people are interested in playing Pot Limit Omaha.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't even know they did it. Yeah, King's Casino seemed to be doing a lot of interesting things lately. Their marketing is definitely working overtime there.
They have a lot of people showing up for sure.
Yeah.
They are also live streaming a PLO game from time to time. Have you ever been on the live stream?
I played one of the games one time. There was like a 5100 game that was running. I was actually there for a different reason because there were like some tournaments. So I wasn't that prepared to play the 5100 game, but it was on stream. So I was like, okay, let's jump in there. But they do have some high stakes games and also some normal stake games. I mean, some like more like 5, 10, 10, 20 games, 25, 50, but also some really high stakes games that they are streaming. And they are always going to be, I mean, they're really always either PLO cash games or no limit hold'em tournaments when they stream.
Right. So where do you think this trend is leading us? What's the future like for PLO?
Well, I don't think anything happens overnight. I think that there are more people getting into PLO just naturally because No Limit dries up. And there are 2 options. Number 1, you are moving from NL cash into NL tournaments, or you move from NL cash into PLO cash. I mean, there's a third option, which is you stop playing poker essentially. Actually, there's a 4th transition, which is you go into the live circuit, which is also possible. But in there, you would also have to pick between NL tournaments and PLO cash. So I think those are the options for NL cash players at the moment. Maybe there is some mixed game as well happening, but very few people would have access to enough games to actually justify that or have the bankroll to play those games. So I do see that people are venturing either into tournaments or in PLO cash. Twitch, you can tell tournaments are being pushed very hard. The issue though with tournaments is obviously that it's a huge time commitment. Every time you sit down, you have to plan ahead for 4, 5, 6, 7 hours, maybe even more. And as the average age is growing in the poker market, there are going to be less and less people willing to sacrifice this much time, which means if you're 21 years old, you don't mind playing tournaments for a living because it's all about poker. But as you grow older and you become 30, 35, you have a family, you have other obligations, you just don't want to sit down on a Saturday and be like, all right, today I'll play poker and I'm going to be gone for the next 10 hours or whatever. Like that's not very practical, and I think that is really what takes away, that's the biggest downside of tournaments essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. And I also feel like most players I talk to that have been playing more than 10 years, or let's say more than 5 years, like almost all of them prefer cash games over tournaments long term. I mean, of course, they occasionally still want to play a live tournament, but the bread and butter game is still cash game.
For sure, you want less variance, you want more flexibility. You also want to have, one of the things I've been considering is a really good skill set to have if you want to play live is if you know how to beat no limit tournaments and you know how to play PLO cash. Because then at the venues, you could take the soft tournaments with you and play the main events. But at the same time, you can jump into some juicy live cash games in PLO and have basically the best of both worlds. I think that's a very attractive combination for a lot of people that consider their future in poker and are willing to put a lot of time down.
Yeah, it's funny because that was exactly my approach, or still is.
Well, tell us more.
So yeah, I mean, I played a lot of live tournaments in the last years, but I want to play more online because I just prefer playing online. And as you said before, it's just I feel like every time I go to the Bellagio or the King's Room at the Rio, I always feel like the PLO games are just so much better. and not only this year, but for the last 5 years or so. So that's one of the reasons why I transitioned to PLO, because I just feel like the games are better, and I also think that tournaments are always going to be soft, but there's also this big downside to tournaments, that there's a lot of variance, and you always have to travel, and all the costs like flights and hotels and stuff. And also I just don't enjoy it that much anymore, because in live tournaments a lot of times you just know what you have to do with 10 big blinds, and it's just push or fold, and it can be quite boring. And it's maybe exciting when you're like 22, 23, but then after a while it's just, yeah, I mean, as I said, it's sometimes it can be boring, especially without a shot clock.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like you work on your game really hard, but then you sit down, like you're sitting down in some live tournament, you have 10 big blinds, and you're thinking, well, where's my edge? Like, I'm just waiting here in order to realize no edge or almost no edge in the game. And that's what I've been working for. But it's just the reality sometimes of shallow poker, of course, that the edges are very thin. And yeah, again, I think we got to stay flexible as professionals and think about trends. I think that's actually a very smart thing to do. I do get this question a lot. What should I do in the future? What game should I pick up on? And one thing is certainly trends, but another thing is also to think about where you have the most fun. Like the lifestyle of a live player versus an online player, the lifestyle of a cash player versus a tournament player is so different that I would also consider this for sure.
What do you think about new games like 7+ Hold'em?
Wait, what is 7+ Hold'em? What am I missing?
I think
it's a 6+ Hold'em, but
6+. Oh,
the Tobi's is way ahead of the curve. This game that you just mentioned, nobody's playing it yet.
No, but actually,
soon it's gonna be just Jack plus Hold'em.
I was just reading in the comment like Coffee attacks says JNandez ahead of the curve, and suddenly Tobi comes around with 7+ Hold'em. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, that's way ahead.
So
way ahead of time.
I mean, you're making fun of me, but actually, I heard that there are different rules. Like 7+ or 6+ Hold'em is a little different on Poker Stars than it is on iPoker, for example.
Yeah, there's basically the rule where like a flush, right? Like a flush beats a full house, and then there's like a mix between like a straight versus like the value of a straight, I think, versus a set. I think I'm not sure, but those could be replaced essentially, and that would like there are two variations where two made hand values would exchange essentially. Like one would be ahead of the other, and then the other way around in 6+ Hold'em. Yeah, I don't really think 6+ Hold'em is going to be an upcoming trend or anything, because first of all, the game in itself is not very complex when it comes to solving it, which is a huge issue these days, because you can just build a solver and just solve it, and that's it. And also we haven't really seen a lot of, like, we haven't seen anyone being excited that is really jumping on it, apart from very high stakes players. And I think the reason they're excited is because they get to play against really high stakes fish. But we haven't really seen any like huge coverage on Twitch or in TV poker where everyone was like, we need to make this game bigger, we need to double down on 6+, F Hold'em, F PLO, let's play 6+ only. Like, we haven't really seen that level of interest, and I don't think it will. I think the lifespan of the game is not very large, apart from this small demographic that is playing it at the very highest stake.
And it's a very good point that you mentioned, that the high-stakes players want to play against the high-stakes fish. Because, of course, in a game like this, as you described, it's easy to solve, relatively easy to solve. And once it's solved, it's pretty easy to memorize, in a way. So it lends itself to like the situation where the fish are actually losing so much and so quickly. Because your edge is just insane, right? And that's the same reason why these weird games come up in Vegas every summer, right? Every summer you go and you check the mixed games, the high-stakes table, and there's going to be at least one game, which they, of course, always claim, oh, we just invented it last week. Never mind that they've been, trying to solve it for like 9 months leading up to the new summer, and every summer is the same. And I'm thinking, like, who is buying this bullshit? Like, who actually thinks like, oh, really? Yeah, you created this game last week. That sounds like a good game. Let's play. Every summer the same thing. So it's an oldest trick in the book, and I feel like 6+ Hold'em is fits that category, right? Because again, like if we compare to a game like PLO, there are solvers in PLO, and then good luck, basically.
Yeah.
Right? You have a solver, well, okay, off you go, right? 6+ Hold'em, you have a good solver, you have a good team that kind of condenses the material for you, and you're going to be crushing. But that's the problem. It's relatively easy to achieve very high level of play. So eventually you come to a situation where it's just not profitable to play because, the house always wins in this kind of situation.